All right, so this continues example number 1 from the section 7.3. So in looking at part C here, what we recognize first is that we have a binomial squared. So that means I'm going to take my first term and I'm going to square it. And then because the middle term's a negative, I know my middle term's a negative. So I take my 2 times my first term, 7a, times my second term, a 2. And then a plus, and then I have my 2, and I'm squaring it. Now, if we just consider the middle of these binomials to be it's a plus or it's a minus, then we don't have to concern ourselves with what the signs of things are. We're just plucking off this as being a first term and this as being a second term, with the binomial being a difference. So that can make a difference to us. And if we look at that one, then we see that that's pretty much the same pattern that we did when we rearranged this one, right? So we have 7 squared, which is 49, times a squared, minus 2 times 7, which is 14, times 2, which is 28, a, and then plus 2 squared, which is 4. Now eventually you're going to get to the point where you can just do this by exactly the way I did when I did the b minus 2a up here, where I said, okay, I'm going to take my first term and I'm going to square it, b squared, and then I'm going to multiply my first term times my second term, 2ab, and then times 2, 4ab, and then I'm going to take my 2a and square it, so 4a squared. But at first you want to write those out so you get the patterns firmly in your mind. Now the next one here, I have a binomial times a binomial where they're exactly the same numbers, just the signs differ. That's the product of conjugates. So I'm going to take my first term, a, and I'm going to square it, minus my second term, 2, and I'm going to square that. So I'm going to get a squared minus 2 squared, which is 4. Make sure that you don't leave it as a squared minus 2 squared. That is not simplified and it won't give you 100% credit. Now on this next one, this is a monomial times a binomial squared. So I'm going to square out the binomial first and then I'll multiply it by the monomial x. So x squared squared, that's x squared times 2 times 2, right? X squared squared, we multiply the exponents. So that's going to give us an x to the 4th power. And then the middle term is x squared times 1 times 2 plus 2x squared. And then my last term is the 1 here squared, and 1 squared is 1. So there we have our binomial squared. Now we have to multiply it by the monomial. So we're going to use the distributive property to do that multiplication by a binomial or by a monomial. So x times x to the 4th, we're going to add the exponents because that's the product rule. 1 plus 4, which is 5. And then plus x times 2x squared, that's 2x to the 2 plus 1 power, which is 3, and then plus 1 times x, which is simply x. And there we go. That's our final answer. All right, moving on to our third problem, we have a binomial squared. So I'm going to go ahead and write this out longhand because we do have that fraction, and that could give you a tiny bit of difficulty. So we have a squared, and then plus, and then 2 times a times 1/2 b, and then plus 1/2 b squared. And now we see that we have a squared, and then 1/2 times 2, that's reciprocals multiplying, which gives us 1, and so that ends up being plus just a b. And then plus, well, when we square 1/2, remember we get 1 squared over 2 squared, so 1/4, and then we get b squared. And so that's what that product, or that squaring of the binomial looks like. And now we have part G, H, and I, and we'll leave those for the next video.